Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sensitivity Doctor. I've got a question for you. Do you ever feel like your closet is going to fall out and explode on you? Do you have a hard time finding things? Do you have 5 junk drawers? This is so common for people with ADHD, sensitivity, busy moms, people with lots of mental load. This episode is going to help break down how we can finally be compassionate with ourselves and get systems that work. I've got Maria Butler from Simply Organized, which is a local agency here in the Raleigh-Durham area. And she does, FYI, they travel all over the state. And the way that they help people get to know them and really figure out what works for you in your space, it's going to work for you too. So I hope you listen with a very compassionate tone and just find a couple things, a little aha about how could you finally make it not feel so overwhelming to keep up with your home and make it ADHD and sensitivity friendly. Enjoy. I'm really excited to have you here, Maria. You're local, right? You're in my
Yes.
area?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. And I had originally reached out to you, and this is so ADHD. So, beginning of the year, I'm like, yes, I'm going to organize all my closets and redo everything, the excitement of a new start. And then I messaged you and I'm like, can you help me do it? And then you never heard back from me.
Right. Which I have
So
to
it's
say is
probably not
normal.
yeah. I will say on my end, I have been slowly working on it though. So like I have been making efforts, but I can't wait to have you here today to talk about not only how listeners can like make their home nervous system friendly, but maybe even impart just a couple pearls of wisdom of how they could actually go do that today. But if you could tell everyone, you know, who you are, what you're going to help them with today, and what the Monica effect is, because I had read something about that, like, oh, I love Friends, so let's jump into that.
So, my name's Maria, and I am the owner of Clearly Organized. We are a local to the Raleigh area organizing company. Started about 5.5 years ago. My background's in education, have a master's degree in education, specifically learning disabilities. I taught for over 10 years. Have 2 boys who are one's out of college now and one is a freshman in college. Um, Stayed home with them for a long time and then decided I needed something to do. Loved teaching, but it's changed a lot in the time that I was home. And I wasn't sure that's really what I wanted to continue doing, but I wanted to do something I could help people. I've always been, pretty organized, and so I really just kind of took the jump during COVID and started this business. Started out slow, was just me in the beginning. Now I have a team of 5, and
Wow.
mostly retired teachers, people who have a lot of experience with ADD, ADHD, and the ADD, ADHD specialty really came organically for us. We started to
Mm.
see more and more people needing that, more and more people asking for that. And so that's kind of
Mhm.
how we really kind of niche down into that. It's still pretty new for us as a specialty, but it's something that we've been doing all along. All along, we just didn't call it that.
Yeah, and I love the idea of 5, maybe it's not exactly 5, but like a bunch of teachers doing this, because having worked in the school, I used to be a guidance counselor at one point in my career and at an elementary school, so you can kind of get the vibe of that. And to keep up with everything you have to do as a teacher, you have to have at least some sort of system.
Yes.
It might look crazy to other people, but at least a system that you identify with.
Yes, yes, exactly. And most of the time, our systems are really simple. And the whole Monica effect is so funny. I love Friends, it's my favorite. And there's an episode, Monica is notoriously organized. She has, all kinds of towels and all kinds of things. But there's one episode where they find her secret closet. And
Oh, I remember that
it's a
episode.
complete disaster. So, and
Yes.
she's so ashamed of it. And so, just it's funny to me because we all have those spaces. We all have spaces that we're ashamed of that we don't want anybody to know. That's kind of our, little dark secret. So it's, she enjoys her label maker and all those things. And I can identify with that.
Okay, so as you're talking about Monica, I had so many questions popped into my mind. One, because I'm obsessed with Friends as well. And I was telling you I had laryngitis last week. I kept jokingly comparing myself to Phoebe when she lost her voice. And like her singing voice for
Yes.
Smelly Cat was so much better. Um, okay, so Monica, I know that she kind of was pegged almost as like the OCD character, but I love that as we're starting to understand how ADHD looks in women especially, I think there's this understanding that's starting to unfold of that there's a big difference between clinical OCD where if certain things don't happen, the anxiety rises to the degree of impairment.
Right.
And it's usually connected to some sort of if this, then that kind of thinking pattern. Whereas with obsessive compulsive behaviors that might show up in I'm saying women because it is so common in women. I'm not saying this couldn't be men, but in a lot of women with ADHD, for example, is that to feel any sense of peace or order, you almost have to have an ample amount, if not too many systems.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So do you think she had OCD or ADHD? No, let's psychoanalyze Monica.
Oh, Monica. I think it was probably both, to be honest. It's probably a touch of both and maybe not one strict category that she fits in. Um, and some of it may have been perfectionism too, where she just has to have it a certain way. And if she didn't do it, it's not done the right way. And I think that's a very female trait as well.
Hmm. Yeah, and I would agree with you. Like if I looked at it clinically, that it could be a bit of everything. But I love that you brought up the word perfectionism because I do feel like it's that kind of all or nothing thinking, the perfectionistic mentality, a completion mentality for ADHDers that keep them from getting started.
Yes. Yes. We find that a lot. We find a lot of clients we have will say to me, I know I can do this. I just get stopped in the middle. I can't finish it. I feel like I know what I need. I just can't get there. So that's where we come in. We take you from where you are to where you want to be, with a good, healthy dose of reality. Because social media is great, but social media also sets us up for failure. You know, there's so many people that are posting their perfect homes, their perfect, organized kitchen, their perfect pantry. Everything is Pinterest perfect. And that's not reality. The great thing about my team is we all have kids. Some of us, our kids are older, some are a little bit younger, but we've all been through it. And I think one thing that we do very well is a lot of empathy, a lot of we understand where you are, you're in the weeds. These things don't matter. What matters are your children, the time you want to spend with them, what you're investing in them. Does it matter that your pantry is Pinterest perfect? No. It matters that it functions well, that you can find the food that you want, that you're not wasting money because you're rebuying snacks 20 times because you can't find the first three loaves that you bought.
I feel called out.
That well, and it's so
I love
true.
a container, but
It's so true. Unfortunately, everybody wants this perfect image that they see on TV and they see on social media,
Mhm,
and it's just not realistic. And, we go into homes, and the first thing that people say to me is, I'm so embarrassed. I'm so embarrassed for you to see my
mm,
house. And it's a
mhm,
normal house. We go in hundreds
mhm,
of homes. It's normal.
mhm,
There are very few homes that we've been in that are perfectly kept up, including my own, is
mm,
not perfectly kept up. It's not the goal.
mhm.
The goal is for the home to function for you, to work for you. So you're not running behind. You're not in this rat race when you get home.
Mm. It's funny when you were saying the like perception of perfection versus the reality. So I would say because of my personality and because of how sensitive I am to my environment, on the external, like quick glance, my home does look pretty organized, or at least clean. My one of our friends' husbands who has ADHD was we were having a get together and he asked my husband, he's like, how do you like how do you guys keep your house looking like this? And I overheard it, and Andrew was about to say, my husband Andrew was about to say something about me being kind of like on top of things. I was like, oh, wait, hold on, Dan, let me show you something. And I walked into the kitchen and I said, one, two, three, four, five. I opened 5 junk drawers. So I don't have, well, no, as I'm looking out of my office French doors right here, I'm looking at this one closet that also, it's fine. It functions okay. But I find for me, the culprit is when a space is too small
Mhm.
for what I need. So I would love if we could maybe, if you're, I don't want to give away too many secrets of you of your trade, but I really would love for people to walk away with some ideas today. What would you say are maybe top 3, 4, however many pop into your mind of like worst culprits for being able, because for me, I was saying it's when the space feels too small. So what are the like top 3 worst culprits for feeling organized and settled in a space, whether it be your closet or your whole house? And then what is maybe one thing that can be done about those 3 things?
Biggest thing, too much stuff. Your home has a finite amount of square footage. You have a finite amount of countertop, counter space, closet space, whatever it may be. Unfortunately, you can only pack so much stuff in there. And if it is packed to the gills, you are never going to know what you have. You are never going to be able to find all the things when you need them in a timely fashion. So, the number one biggest tip, it's not a secret, I tell it all the time, declutter. Get rid of what you don't need. We have been in so many situations where, families are bulk buying, but they have nowhere to store it. I'm not trying to talk ugly about Costco or Sam's Club or anything like that. And people
Yeah.
go and they think they're saving money. And my first challenge to them is always look at the cost of that membership, look at what you're buying. If you clipped an electronic coupon, would you be able to get it at your local store in a reasonable amount? We worked with a family, lovely, lovely family, but they loved Costco. They had one child who was, I think, 3 at the time. They had at least 12 bottles of infant Tylenol, all expired.
What I thought you were gonna say like the what is it called? Infamil or whatever
No,
the
infant Tylenol,
milk
all
Tylenol.
expired.
That'd be enough for an entire childhood.
Exactly. All expired
Yeah.
because they would go to
Oh
Costco
no.
and they would forget that
Yeah.
they had it or they couldn't find it.
Yeah.
And there they go. Same family. Love
This
them.
episode is not sponsored by
No.
Costco.
And Costco has its purpose.
I don't even have a membership, so you're not hurting my
Honestly,
feelings.
I don't
It
either.
overwhelms me. It's too big. It's too big for
It
me.
is. And, now that my kids are grown, I don't need 500 rolls of paper towels. But this same family, they were a great family. Don't get me wrong. They were hardworking. They wanted a great home. No one's in these situations because they're lazy and they don't know what to do. So this same family, they didn't have great storage in their kitchen. Beautiful home, not great storage. We ended up turning a front coat closet that was adjacent to their kitchen into kind of a makeshift pantry because they just didn't have anywhere else. And so they had lots of beans, lots of lentils, those types of things. And when we went through that kitchen, we cleaned out all the food, threw away everything that was expired, set up this pantry. She texted me after we were done and said, I have not had to buy a single pantry staple this entire time.
She's like, because now I can see it all. That's
because
so
she could see
funny.
it all because it was tucked into different cabinets, different spots,
Yeah.
wherever they could just kind of cram it in because there was no system. There was nothing set in place that said, this is where the
Right.
beans go. This is where the lentils go. This is where your canned goods go. So because of that, it's 6-9 months. They bought nothing. It was amazing. She said,
So
I had
as
to
I,
buy fruits and meats, and that's it.
I mean, yes, that we don't want for 6 months. But when you're saying this, psychologically, I'm thinking of a couple of things why someone would get to the point where they have 12 bottles of Tylenol. And I think about, whether it's trauma, sensitivity, ADHD, mental load, menopause, like all the reasons that we might be like over preparing. There's this, so I sometimes have this mentality, and this might be, maybe it's the kind of immigrate generational trauma immigration mentality where um like I remember my mom never wanting to run out of something ever. And so that has kind of carried over into my mentality where it's almost like, and it's not a crisis, but it's a huge problem mentally if we're out of something.
Yes.
Almost like I have righted the ship and prepared everyone by having those extra toothbrushes
Mhm.
or whatever it may be. Now, I will say, side note, you mentioned COVID. I was very happy I over prepared with so much toilet paper at that time, but that's a totally extraneous circumstance. What is your thought on the anxiety that drives us to over prepare like that and have so much? And how can we deal with that?
Anxiety is a part of it. With our clients, a lot of it is just busyness more than the anxiety of wanting to be overly prepared. Now, we do encounter some people who COVID scarred them. I mean, COVID scarred all of us. Um, and they really are still afraid of not having, if something like that should happen again.
Yeah.
So we talk through that. We talk about what's a reasonable amount. We're not against having a backstock. We're not against keeping extras of things, but it's keeping them in an appropriate manner where you have the appropriate storage. If you have a 10,000 square foot house, then yeah, you probably have storage for 20 rolls of paper towels somewhere. But if you're living in an 1,800 square foot house, that may not be realistic for you. And there are other ways to deal with that. You can order groceries online, you can order through Amazon, there are ways to make sure that you pay attention, you stay stocked without it becoming this like secret monster that lives in the house that's taking over all the space.
Mm. I love that idea of just kind of setting up systems. It almost sounds like that's a system that also helps is these subscribe and saves and all of that, which I think could be really comforting for ADHDers who are afraid they're going to forget to restock or afraid they're going to forget about something because maybe, I mean, I'm thinking of especially in a home where maybe both people, if it's a heterosexual couple, like husband and wife both have ADHD, or even, any sort of couple, same sex couple, and both of them have ADHD, um, where you're kind of like, are you gonna remember? Are you gonna no? Okay, well we. So I love that idea of like taking advantage of something like subscribe and save. Ordering groceries is not always, economically feasible for everyone. I definitely and I don't even know. There might be areas of people listening where that is not an
It
option,
may
but
be.
I love that. Yeah. Okay. So that's number one is too much stuff. And actually, one other thing I heard once that, um, well, actually, I want to get your take on this. Slow reorganization, where you're like chipping away, versus what I feel like ADHD people are generally more prone to do, which is where they take an entire drawer of junk and they dump it and they're like, okay, I'm going to clean all this up. And then you get the like mental load crash. And so the dumped stuff ends up staying where you dumped it.
Okay.
How? Dot, dot, dot. What do we do?
So it's when we're working with someone, we're a very customizable service. So that's something we talk about with them is how much control do you need? Some of us need more control than others. So we talk about how much control do you need. So we have clients that we meet with, we talk about all the things, we get lots of criteria, we really get to know them, and we go in and we will flip a whole house in 3 or 4 days, top to
Wow.
bottom, go through. If we have really good criteria, we are able to get up with them, we can do it. Some people just do not want to be involved. They cannot handle the getting rid of stuff. So we did one recently. It was a single mom with a small child. And she looked at me and she said, I can't be here. I trust you.
Honest.
I can't. And then I
Yep.
love that because we can accommodate that. So she was like, I cannot be here. Just do what you did. When there was anything that was kind of a question, I sent her a quick picture, sent her a text, say, hey, what do you think of this? And we went from there. But then we, on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, we have clients. We have one person we've been working with almost a year, and that is exactly what we're doing. We're chipping away, room by room, space by space, drawer by drawer. We'll work 3 or 4 weeks in a row. We'll take a couple weeks off. We'll work 3 or 4 more weeks in a row. It is at her pace, and she has been so successful. She
Oh,
has
good.
really been, she is maintaining her spaces. Some people cannot handle all the new systems at once. If we go in and we set up a new system in your kitchen, a new system in your pantry, a new system in your clothes closet, a new system in your laundry room, and you're ADHD and you're having a hard time focusing, it's a lot of new at once.
And when you say system, so it's interesting because I think of like what has worked for me well is themes. So like we have with all of our drawers, we're slowly turning some of these drawers into like we just got a new dog that I love, Dorothy. She's so cute. I put her on social. If she was in here, I would show her to you. And so something about having the newness, I was like, oh yeah, there was this drawer we didn't know what to do. What if we use that for all the dog stuff? And so like it's that. Or like we had this other drawer that if anyone knows what the Fudge family is, they're like the bane of my existence as a mom, where I'm like, I can't just send you lunch. I have to make you an art piece. So I don't do it as crazy as them. She's a brilliant artist of kids' lunches. But we do have a quote Fudge family drawer where it's all the cute little cutouts and all this. So for me, the way I do a system is like a theme, and then let's say a theme, containers, and I'm always getting rid of stuff.
Yes.
I think those are my three things I'm constantly doing.
Well, and that's really, I mean, I think that's great. And it's when we go in with a new client, obviously we have things we've done that worked with other clients, but nothing is set in stone with a new client. It is getting to know that person, because the themes that you set up in your kitchen probably work for you really well. But I could take somebody else and they would say, oh, this doesn't make sense together because this isn't how I use it. So
or maybe you're not 5'1" like me, and I can't reach up high and
that's
get the stuff that you can.
And that's a huge consideration when we're dealing with clients. Can you reach it?
Yeah, good point.
We talk about real estate and the real estate in your kitchen, how it's the prime real estate. You want those things that you're doing every single day, that you're reaching for every single morning. We don't want the walk in a main space that you use once every 6 months. You know what I mean?
Good point.
We want to put that somewhere else. We want to put that away, because if you're going to make a meal using that, you're going to plan that ahead of time. So you're going to know to go to that cabinet that's kind of up high and get it. You're not climbing up there every day to get it. So that's a lot of what we talk about. But systems look different for everyone, because you have your drawer, your fudge drawer, where all those things go together. Someone else may think, oh, I don't want it like that because I don't use it this way, or I use it another way. So it just depends on the person. So it's one of those things. Our clients, we really have a relationship with them. It's not a in and out usually. Every once in a while we'll get somebody who's like that, but most of them, we're building a relationship. We're getting to know them, getting to know, when you walk in the house, where do you put your mail? What door do you come in? We can set up a mail system for you, but if we set it up at the front door and you come in the back door, then that's, potentially 30, 40 extra steps to put it in that system.
Yeah.
Let's set it up by where you come in.
So what you're saying, how I was saying like the three kind of pitfalls, it sounds like one of the pitfalls you're talking about is, let's say hypothetically, someone's not going to work with an organizer, but they're trying to figure this out for themselves. Pitfall number 2 sounds like you're saying is not paying attention to your habits.
Yes. You have to work within your habits. Habits are hard to create and they're hard to break. So we do a lot of talk about habit stacking. If you've already got one habit, let's add something else to it. If you already come in the back door and your mail goes on the countertop, but you hate the mess on the countertop, let's talk about, is there an adjacent place that it could go? Or what could we put it in on top of the countertop so you get the look you want, but you're not having to create constantly new habits? So those are things that we look at with clients.
I like the idea of the look you want too, because I think that's something when we enjoy a space or a system, it motivates us to do it
If
more.
it's pretty, you're going to keep it up. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what we tell clients. We love, like, pantries are just a great example. Um,
Mhm.
everybody's budget conscious, which is completely understandable. So we have
Mhm.
really great bins that we love to use that are very budget friendly, and they look great. And we can give you that
Mhm.
really pretty cohesive look,
Mhm.
because if it's pretty, you will keep it up better. It's just a practical.
Yeah. I'm more likely to use something out of a jar or something that I can
Mhm.
see, which actually that leads to another ADHD oriented thought is, and this goes along I think with your walk metaphor. It's not really a metaphor. Your walk example um, is like, okay, disclaimer, the whole object permanence is not true with ADHD. That people with ADHD don't just suddenly forget that a walk
Right.
exists. However, it doesn't, you don't get the same sort of kind of like trigger. You're not going to be as likely to remember it unless you see it. So it sounds like visibility might be like a lack of visibility might be a third pitfall.
It is, but it's interesting to me because people are very strongly in two camps. And whether they're ADHD or not, they still fall in these two camps. We have the people who, if they don't see it, it doesn't exist. So those people, we strongly recommend clear bins. We do everything we can to make sure everything's very visible. There are labels. But then we also get people sometimes who, that visual stimulation of having the clear bins and then seeing all the things inside it is overwhelming and stressful.
Good point. Good
So
point.
that's another thing we really talk about with clients is, okay, if we have a wall of clear bins, it's going to have different things in it. Is that going to help you to see those things, or is that going to stress you out? And it's a very personal thing. And and unfortunately, sometimes husband is one way, wife is another way. So, and then we've had, blended families. We've had families that have in-laws living with them. So then it gets down to, okay, who's the main user of the space? And then that's who we cater to. So like we did a family, it was husband, wife, brother, and mother-in-law in a home. And
Wow.
everybody wanted input on the kitchen. And so our question was, who's the main cook? Who is the main cook? That's who the
Okay.
kitchen caters to. Everyone else can
That's
just
such
look.
simple advice and it makes so much
Well, it
sense.
does. And it turned out it was actually the husband who was the main cook. And he was the one that was the most ADHD, I think, of the crew. Wonderful family. And we set it up to his needs. Now, we did keep in mind a couple things. The wife is the one who packed the lunches for their daughter. So we made a section for her that fit her needs. But that's kind of what you have to do. And to do that sometimes yourself and to talk to your partner and to figure that out can be very hard because there's probably already some angst there. They've probably already argued about it. And then we kind of come in, we're a neutral party. We're not picking sides. We're just asking questions and getting information. And then we're taking that factual information and making suggestions.
So if someone is not working with an organizer specifically, how could they do this for themselves?
They're going to have to get very real and very honest with themselves about what they need, what it needs to look like. Um, and if there are other people in the home, they're going to have some very honest discussions about how can we set this up so that it fits the main user of the space and they can
Mhm.
maintain it.
Yeah, it sounds like even just simply taking some of the questions that you're saying and maybe jotting them down and then like journaling and sitting and kind of answering it or talking with someone, bouncing the
Mhm.
ideas. Okay, so we've covered those things. There's something we haven't covered that I'm curious if you've heard the term before and if it's something you encourage with ADHD or discourage. And that is a doom box.
I have
Do you know what that
heard it.
is?
I've heard different versions of it.
Do you want me to define it
Tell
again?
me what yes.
Okay. So it's an acronym that stands for Didn't Organize, Only Moved. And It can be a literal box. For anyone not watching, I'm just doing kind of like a shoebox size. It can also be a much larger space. I think at some point it becomes no longer the Doom
The
box.
doom home.
Um, oh, what was
It's the
that?
doom
Yeah,
home.
your entire home.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, Doom home.
mhm.
And I guess, yeah, the term is so useful. So on one hand, I can see the value of having a place where you don't have to hyper think about organizing. On the other hand, I can see it being overwhelming for nervous systems and becoming a hindrance. So, what are your thoughts on the Doom box, Doom space?
Um, I think that if it's someone who is genuinely trying to get organized and it is very important to them and they see the benefit that doom box is a crutch. It is, let me throw it
Okay.
here because I don't feel like dealing it right
Mm,
now, where it's actually going to take longer because you're doing two steps. You're throwing it in the box and then you've got to figure out where it goes later on, right? Where if you just take it and put it in the spot it belongs to start with, it's a much quicker process. And so that's what we tell people. Don't put it down, put it away. Just go on it. And once you get used to doing that, yes, it takes a little while. Yes, it's a new thing you're trying to do. It feels longer in the beginning. But once you get into that habit of doing that, it'll take much less time. So when we come in or if someone's organizing, the biggest thing is declutter. Make sure everything has a home, a specific spot. Label it if you have to. We have gone as far as labeling the inside of drawers, forks, spoons, knives, big spoons, serving pieces, so that every single thing has a specific labeled home.
And I could see where having someone come in and do that for you would be so useful because not everyone to even get to the point of doing that would be difficult. But, I can't help but think when you're saying these different things that when I'm in a good spot, when I'm well rested, when I'm not overwhelmed, when I'm doing the things I need to do for self care, like I can do those
Mm-hmm.
things. I actually thrive off of. Well, I do it almost in phases. Like when I work in this office here, this is my therapy slash podcast office, and then I have my other office slowly throughout the day, things start to accumulate. Like right now, I have my little notes for us. I've got my water, I got my lip gloss, I got my phone. I have like slowly it starts to kind of not expand. We'll call it expand slowly. And then for me, at the end of the day, is the trigger for me to like the end of my work day is the trigger for me to kind of put everything back in its place
Right.
so that the next time I come, it feels at peace. But I'm thinking of like I have a client who she has ADHD, her husband has ADHD, her son has ADHD, her other son has ADHD, her other daughter has ADHD, and they're all under 8 years
Oh,
old.
wow.
And actually, what we've been I would love to link you up with her. She's in the area, but what I've been thinking about with her is that she has gotten so stressed about put it away, not put it down, that it's impacting her ability to feel at peace with her
Okay.
children.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah. So that's, and I mean, she constantly, let me put it this way, interesting point. She was getting rid of things, but she was doing it from a perfectionist perspective. Like she was folding, labeling, cleaning, like hyper organizing these baby clothes she's giving away. And we actually purposely sometimes we'll do telehealth sessions where she'll be in her home and we'll talk about what's happening in her home. And I said to her, I said, "Do you know how do you know how I gave away my baby clothes? I made sure they were clean. I crammed them in a bag and they're out the door." I'm not saying that it's nice to fold them, but like, how do we help someone where they're in that sort of chaos and that
I
situation?
think it's just so important. We come in with a lot of empathy and a lot of talking about grace, a lot of talking about you're not perfect, you're not going to be perfect. The goal is not perfection. Um, an example of this, and this was not my idea, I got this from a client because we learn a lot from our clients too. We had a client who was a single mom. She had 3 kids. She had the best clothing system I've ever seen in my life. If I had seen this when my kids were little, I would have used it. She had a cubbies, just the little cubbies with the 12 by 12 squares. Each cubby had a fabric bin in it with a label, said what it was, socks, underwear, t-shirts, a little picture because her kids, ranged in age.
Oh, that's
And
cute.
she gave up on the folding. She just gave up. She's like, there's no
They're in the
point
bins.
It doesn't matter. If they have a wrinkle, life will not end. And I thought, that is genius. She's not fighting with the kids about the clothes. There's so many things we can fight with our kids about. Why are you going to fight about if the clothes are folded perfectly? Does that matter?
I love that. I want to share that with her actually, see how she's doing the
Well,
clothes.
it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of life. If your 5-year-old's t-shirt is a little wrinkled, will anything happen? No. So as much as we like our systems and we love the put it away, don't put it down, we also talk a lot about grace. And we also talk about a lot about some days aren't going to go well. Some days it's not going to stay perfectly organized. So then you take that 15, 20 minutes like you do at the end of the day and you put the stuff away. And, one thing that we've added as a company recently is maintenance programs, because we do
That's nice.
find that there are just some clients, and it's not lazy. Everybody's like, oh, I'm so lazy. No, you're not. You're working full time, have 3 kids, they're running them to sports, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're trying to feed them healthy, you're trying to keep up with social media, you're trying to keep up with your side gig or whatever you're trying to do. You don't have time. So we've started offering that, and it's, not a shameful thing. It's, we ask people are like, I'm so embarrassed, my house, this. No, you need to be ashamed and embarrassed when you don't ask for help.
So for the maintenance, how long do you come in for maintenance? And the reason I'm asking is because we have folks who are listening who are in the area who will hopefully be able to reach out and work with you, but a good portion of people listening are not here and they're not going to be able to use you specifically.
Right.
So how often do you go in and for how long? And I'm wondering if maybe that's something they could put in their mind. Like, I need to do my maintenance kind of similarly.
It depends. We have clients that are monthly and we send one person in for 4 hours. We have quarterly clients. It really is a very personalized system. And I always tell my clients, if one of the prepackaged things we have doesn't work for you, we'll do it more often, less often. We have a bi-weekly option that someone can go in for a couple hours. A lot of it depends on the size of the home. A lot of it depends if there are kids involved. It depends what spaces they want maintained. And it's always spaces that we have come in and organized. So if we've come in and organized your pantry, your kitchen, your primary closet, we will come back and maintain those spaces. And it's just one of those things. We do it 3 months at a time. We book it out. So they have priority on our calendar. They know their person's going to come. We try our very, very best to have it be the same person coming so that they get that consistency and that continuity. They develop a relationship with that organizer. And it's usually one of the organizers that was involved in the original organizing process so that they know that homeowner, there's a lot to be said for those homeowners being comfortable with us. So if you're looking to do this for yourself, set a day of the week. Sunday night seems to be a really great reset night for most people. You're getting ready for the week ahead. Go on and make sure everything's in its place. Go on and make sure that you've reset your pantry. You have your snacks, you've checked your back stock, that you have everything you need for the week. If not, that's the time to go on and make that grocery store run. Go on and order those groceries if that's something you're able to do. Make your list. When we're talking about resetting systems, one thing that we do is normally we'll set up a back stock area. So what we tell people is first you shop your back stock. That's how you save some money. You shop that back stock. You know that you've got 16 rolls of paper towels. When you get down to 2 or 3 rolls of paper towels, that's when you know, okay, I need to put that on the list to get from the grocery store. You don't wait till you're out.
Right.
Because then that goes back to the anxiety you were talking about. So just simple things like that. And it doesn't have to be Sunday. It can be any day of the week that makes sense for you. I know my mother-in-law shops on Saturdays. I don't want to spend Saturday in the grocery store. So I usually do my grocery shopping in the morning. I'll put in my order Sunday night and pick it up. And that's something I'm able to do. But, you tailor that to what works for you. I think we get bogged down in, well, the organizer said I had to do it on this day. Well, if that doesn't work for you, adjust it. I give you permission, and we find that with clients. They're like, but I want to do it the way you said. Well, the way I said's not working for you. Let's talk about some other way that is. You have permission to change it. This is your home. And I think another thing people get bogged down in is it has to look organized to everyone else. And I don't think
That's such a good point.
that's not reality. My organized kitchen, how I cook, could look very, very different from someone else's. So I think people need to remember whether they're hiring someone or they're doing it themselves, it works for your brain. You're an individual, you're unique, you don't fit into a mold. Make it work for you. If that means that, your dishes are, in the opposite place from where the organizer suggests, that's okay. We worked with a family. We tend to put dishes by the dishwasher because that makes sense for
Okay,
us.
makes sense.
You're unloading the dishes, you want to put them right there in the dishwasher. So we worked with a
Right.
family and we were talking through things, and that was one of the things we mentioned. And she said, "Oh no, I can't do that." I said, "Okay, tell me why. Tell me what's going on." She needed her dishes across the kitchen near the dining table. She said, "My kids set the table. If it's
Oh, okay,
here
that makes
and I'm
sense.
cooking dinner, they're in the way of me cooking dinner. I don't want them in here getting hurt, getting burned, whatever. If the dishes are across the kitchen near the
Yeah,
table,
it makes a lot of
that
sense.
it perfect sense." But had we not had that conversation, we wouldn't have known. And had she been stuck in, I have to do it the quote unquote right way, it would have been inconvenient for her. So that's a big
I like
takeaway for me.
Yeah, no, I like that you're bringing that up too, because I think when we kind of come full circle with our conversation and think about if someone listening has ADHD, or maybe they are, just sensitive to their environment, they're an HSP or whatever it is you're coming to the table with today. Um, if the system or your space brings you peace, and sometimes peace means you can see it. And to someone else, that might look like clutter, but to you it might feel available or it might feel accessible. I loved your idea you brought up today of, as we go room by room or space by space, checking in on who is kind of the owner of the space, or at least the director of the space a little bit more. um, and I think also just having compassion and letting our spaces be so different. I think about even just in my room, not my room, my house, the way that my daughter's room looks. It's clean, but it would stress me out. Like everything is so visible the way she has it. Like she has this little vanity. She's 10. So she has this little vanity, and I got her this little basket. I love baskets. I got her this little basket to put all her stuff, and I'm like, oh, it's so cute. I leave a couple days later, I go in, and she has taken everything out of the basket and put her bows in a row on, like it has to be all displayed for her to like it and to feel like it's got a system and it's at peace. So I think I love that's something that you said that you really focus on a lot is the compassion piece, because sometimes it's not going to look the way that other people prescribe or think.
Well, and that's big for us.
Yeah.
We take lots of before and after pictures. Obviously, we post those on social media. Everybody wants to see how we do things. That's great. But there are homes that we don't do that at all. Not because we're ashamed of it or we don't think it was done well, but because there may be something that someone may comment on social media that might be hurtful to that owner. They may not want their home out there, but or it's not that Pinterest perfect that everybody's looking for to
Right.
see, but it works for that homeowner. And so that's our goal. And I think that should be your own goal when you're organizing yourself, is that it works for you. Like your daughter's a perfect example. We work with kids quite a bit, and it's what works for them. So we always have a discussion with parents. How much freedom does this child have? How much can they do this in a way that pleases them for their room? And the most successful rooms that we do are the parents who say, I don't care. I want it to work for them. I want them to feel comfortable in their space.
That makes sense. Autonomy.
Once that kid knows that they're involved in the process, They make decisions because we don't force them to get rid of stuff. They get rid of way more than we ever expect because they're in control and it's their space. So I think that's really important. As parents, we forget. I too have 2 kids and they're very different. One doesn't like to even close the dresser drawers because why? I'm going to have to open them tomorrow. And the other one,
So
everything's lined up perfectly neat. Polar opposites. I just close the doors. It's not a battle worth having in my opinion.
Yeah. I love that because it is, I mean, even from an organizer yourself, you're saying giving that autonomy, giving the freedom, the willingness, and it makes sense to me now when I think back of times where I've tried to donate or get rid of things. And sometimes it was so funny. It went so well until about the age of 4. And then around 4, I think my daughter was like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Why are you getting rid of my stuff? And so it's such a interesting polarization of I want to respect their wishes and check in. Like, is it okay if I get rid of this thing you haven't played with in 3 years? Or can we, they do much better when we're donating, and they do even better when we're donating to a friend.
Yes. When they understand where
I
it's
love
going.
that.
One thing
Yes.
One thing I do want to say, excuse me, when we work with these kids and these parents, we do ask, are there kind of ground rules? You know, things that, excuse me, are basic. No food left in the room. You know, food has consequences. There may be bugs that follow. So it's not like the kids are given complete, total free reign and it's chaos. You know, there are some reality things that we have to deal with. You know, do these things get stored in here? You know, that type of thing. So there are parameters, which I think are important. I think kids need some guidelines, but within those guidelines, give them some freedom also. You know, let them make decisions.
Yeah.
But I do want to say we do get parameters from the parent. Food is just an easy example I can think of off the top of my head. But, you know, there may be some other guidelines of what is allowed or isn't allowed in their room when we work with them to figure out what stays and what goes. But I do think you hit a great point. If they know where it's going, if they know that it's getting sent to a friend or to kids in a hospital or kids that don't have toys, honestly, that works for adults too. Knowing that your things are going to help someone makes it so much easier to get rid of things.
I love that. And if anything, it taps into this theme that we've kind of talked about today is if there's systems, there's techniques, but at the core of it, it's all going to come down to compassion and self-compassion. And I really appreciate you sharing, you know, some of your insights and your tips. And Maria, I'm curious if anyone's in the area and they want to be able to work with you, or I don't know if you travel, or I don't know if you just have online resources, but where can people learn more about working with you?
That's great. We are mainly in the Raleigh area. We do some traveling, so we are open to that. Depends, you know, we kind of take that on a case-by-case basis. We are on all social media, Clearly Organized NC, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Our website is clearlyorganizednc.com. So you can find us there. You know, any of those places have all the contact information where you can set up a complimentary phone consultation. We'll go through all the steps and the processes with you, make sure that you understand everything, and then set up our first consultation with you in your home.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing all your ideas. And I'd love to hear from you guys if you put any of these ideas into practice, or if you have any questions for Maria, you can throw them in the comments on the episodes, and I will make sure she gets back to you.
All right. Thank you, Brenda.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Be well.